Hello everyone, thanks for dropping by. That's the Maserati latest and greatest Gran Turismo. It's got a V6 engine in it because they've discontinued the V8. And apparently women like the sound of a Maserati engine for some reason. Would I have one of those? Yeah, I always liked Maseratis, and I would have one in that colour as well, as it stands out. But enough about that. As you know, the world's population has been going in a steep decline for the past several years, and especially here in the Western world. Now that's starting to have a real serious effect on the movers and shakers of the world economy and the political classes. I was looking around, I found this. As you can see, it's the Washington Post, which is Bezos's rag, and with that title underneath, it's a Democratic slant towards this problem. As you can see, Americans are having fewer kids. The grand GOP, the Republicans, have made this problem worse. It's a hit piece on mostly the Republicans and the falling birth rate, but there's a few interesting things in it. Hey up. Predominantly blaming Jews, Trump crosses a dangerous line. Yeah, never mind. If you drop down here, you see the graph and expected number of children average US women will have over her lifetime. Now, if you look, 1990, that's when third wave feminism kicked in. But here, 2000 is when MGTOW started to have a noticeable impact in the male mindset. As you go along, 2007, when MGTOW started becoming mainstream, and then it just drops. So this, you could say, is the MGTOW effect on the falling birth rate, where guys are seeing what women are really like, and then decided the only way to win the game is not to play it, and the juice isn't worth the squeeze, and this is the result. 1.617 children in a woman's entire lifetime. And then we have Americans increasing, say, 3 kids is the ideal number for a family to have. Well, in my family, there was 3 lads, mum had, and me being the last. And then, ideal number of kids, women aged 17 to 19 say they want to have over their lifetimes. Once again, MGTOW was here, and it bumps along, but women don't want to be bothered with men because they only go after Chad. They want to have children with Chad or Tyrone. It leaked up a bit in 2020 to 2.63, but then it started dropping again. And then more yada yada in the bottom bit. Maybe there's more low-hanging fruit here fertility-wise in a place such as Finland. One idea for America is slash the tax burden for families with young children, a traditional bipartisan policy that a few Republican senators are currently blocking. So I wouldn't put it past the Democratic Party to blame the Republican Party for the American falling birth rate. Now, I also found this to support that. This is the Centers for Disease Control in America. US fertility rate drops to another historic low. It's only a small article, but this bit is the interesting one. Whoops. The birth rate for women aged 20 to 24, when women are at prime, reached a record low. Now, that could have 2 outlooks. One is guys are not bothering with women in 20 to 24. They're not bothering to date because they find that they just don't want to go with them because they're too toxic. Or women in that age only want to sleep and have children with Chad or Tyrone. It's somewhat of a moot point, but it's interesting. Now, this low birth rate is having a political impact in America. As I found this, I don't know if Politico is a Republican or Democrat leaning site, so I'll leave it to you to decide. But it says, political shockwaves of America's falling birth rates. Now, this was done on the 30th of the 7th, that's July this year. And it goes down as some of the long-term economic consequences, demographics and economists say the US could face if Donald Trump. On that basis, I'd say this is a Democrat left-leaning publication. Makes good of a central tenet of his campaign platform, significantly cutting immigration levels and increasing deportations. Of course, America is open to immigration if you go through the right channels and apply. If you just turn up at the border, you're not going to be just let in and given cash and prizes. The reason why curtailing immigration should send large shockwaves through the American economy isn't simply the nation would be deprived of the economic benefits of immigration. I've seen reports of crime waves going up where the large number of immigrants in America, same as in my country. It's because the effect would be amplified by a much more deeply ingrained and long-term trend that's starting to surface more frequently in political discourse. The consequences of a shrinking population as fewer American families decide to have children. But there's nowhere in these articles that say women are becoming increasingly picky with a feminist mindset, and they see the average men, which is on their level, as beneath them. There's nothing about that at all. And it says, a new political awareness is growing in America's record low birth rate, a debate that's been turbocharged recently by Vice President candidate J.D. Vance's viral comments about childless cat ladies, which maligned Americans who don't have children. Vance has called the issue catastrophic for the country. The bigger catastrophic issue for America is the number of women who think they're tens and they don't want to date guys on their level, and i.e. they're just far too picky. They only want Chad or Tyrone, but Chad and Tyrone doesn't want them. That's the catastrophic issue for America. And he says, if our society is not having enough children to replace itself, it is a profoundly dangerous and destabilizing thing. He said in an interview with Meg Kelly on Friday. And then yada yada, but goes down. This was highlighted when I opened this link. In the United States, the number of births decreased 3% from 2022, according to the most recent data collected by the Centers of Disease Control. That's that one. Bringing the birth rate down to 1.6 births per woman over the course of her lifetime. That's far below the rate needed to keep the US population at replacement levels. And then it goes about other countries. More people means more productivity and a higher gross domestic product. In other words, the politicians are just looking at the tax intake. In the most recent outlook from the Congressional Budget Office, economists say the raising immigration would increase the growth rate of gross domestic product by 0.2% throughout the next decade by increasing available labor force, cheap labor. That's $7 trillion in growth over the next decade, generated by immigration, equaling to $1 trillion in tax revenue. That's the only thing they're worried about, the tax revenue going down. And then more yada yada. Now this is also being reported over here. The Guardian is a leftish paper, so you can expect the leftish slant in this article. But it's just a lot of yada yada, but this is mostly concerned with Australia. But if you go right down the bottom, fertility decisions are the result of complex balance of economic, personal and family factors. Now, here's all the reasons, but nowhere in this list does it say that women are becoming too picky and they just don't want to date and get with guys on their sexual market value level. All these women probably think they're 10s, and a guy who is a 5 or a 6, which is the same as a woman, she just looks down and he is just invisible to her. And it says, by 2054, there's likely to be a natural population decline, more births and deaths. So immigration will be more important than ever to fill skill shortages and fuel growth. Loads of people from Africa are not going to fill skill shortages and fuel growth. To build houses and infrastructure in Australia, immigration is used to buffer the fertility rate, but it is on its own policy battleground. And then we get maybe just a nod towards the real problem. The blame gets placed on women. The blame gets placed on women. Whoops. Women are seen as the gatekeepers of population and sex, and are seen as hedonistic and selfish if they do not populate. So that could be at least a half-hearted nod to the real problem of women not wanting to go with guys on their sexual market value level, as your parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and all the rest of your ancestors did. And then it goes 1944, inquiry into Australian birth rates, and then yada yada yada. But as you can see, the political shockwaves in America's falling birth rates, the storm's starting to break, people. And the Centre of Disease Control, a federal government agency in America, they're worried about it. And it's gone political because the Democrats are blaming the Republicans that are going to make the problem worse. But it could have been the Democrats who brought in the female-friendly family courts in America. So they're as equally responsible as anybody else. But this storm is only just starting, and even after November, it's not going to go away, and this is going to carry on until some radical decisions are made to make the playing field more level, so women can go with guys more on their level instead of going with Chad and Tyrone. I think I'm on the 15-minute now. I want to keep these videos short from now on. So, you know the routine, people, like, dislike, etc. It's completely up to you. So until next Monday, that's it for this one. Bye-bye.